Hey film fans, welcome to CinePro, your ultimate hub for all movie recaps. From heartwarming classics to the latest blockbusters. The series begins with Dexter, who is roaming around the city looking for a new victim. He ends up at a school children's party, where he sees a man named Mike and decides he is the one he is after. When the party ends, Mike goes to his car and finds Dexter waiting inside, threatening him to drive to a location Dexter will specify. Mike actually drives to the place where he usually buries his bodies. There, Dexter tells him that he is tired of searching for the bodies of abused children and that he intends to take revenge for them. He ties Mike to a metal bed, cuts his face, takes a blood sample from him, then kills him and cuts up his body so no one can find it. Dexter narrates that he doesn't understand how he ended up like this, but he enjoys what he does. He tells us that the man who raised him was a retired officer named Harry, and that one day Harry discovered that Dexter killed the neighbor's dog because it was very annoying. After that, Dexter returns to his apartment, takes out the blood sample he took from Mike and puts it in a box with the rest of his samples, saying that Harry taught him some rules he must follow if he wants to avoid execution. Finally, Dexter prepares himself and goes to his job as a blood analyst in the police department. Dexter arrives at the crime scene, where his sister Deborah is working as a vice officer. She tells him that the deceased is one of the girls who used to work with her. Dexter goes to look at the body and meets his colleague Masuka, and they discover that this time there isn't a single drop of blood around the corpse. When Dexter sees the body, he feels a strange sensation, as if there is another professional killer like him, and the method of killing sends a message. This feeling makes him inexplicably happy, but because of the crowd around him, he can't focus, so he leaves. He then goes to the archive worker and asks her for an old case file. At the same time, Detective James asks Dexter to analyze blood samples from the crime scene, but is suspicious of him because he doesn't fear the sight of blood like other people. When Dexter returns to the crime scene, he finds the blood distributed perfectly, so he explains to the officer exactly how the killing happened. Afterwards, he leaves to eat and think about his new victims, including Jimmy, a hotel security employee. Dexter suspects he is the killer and also connected to a major prostitution site in America, because of a tattoo on his hand. Dexter goes to Jimmy's house, finds a dog waiting, but manages to deal with it and enters his room, where he finds evidence confirming Jimmy's involvement in the crime. At night, Dexter goes to Rita, whom he met during a case when her sister was involved, and since then they've been in a relationship. Dexter loves her children, Cody and Astor, and brings them the sweets they like. He goes out with Rita to a party, where he feels that Rita is a very normal woman, different from anyone else. But while there, he notices police nearby, so he quickly leaves Rita to see what's going on, discovering a new victim of the serial killer, again with no blood. Detective Angel tells him the body was cut up very professionally, which makes Dexter feel that whoever is behind these crimes is a genius. He keeps thinking about what's happening on his way back. When Dexter returns home, he starts reviewing Jimmy's case again, confirms that he was a member of a rape site, and notices that the tattoo he saw on his hand is the same. At that moment he remembers Harry's words, telling him he must follow certain rules to be a clean killer, or else the police will catch him one day. Harry always emphasized that the police would never be able to catch all the criminals, and that getting rid of bad people in the right way is a service to society. Dexter then begins preparing the tools he will need for the next step. In the police department, Deborah suggests that the killer uses refrigeration to kill victims and might use a car with a fridge or freezer, but LaGuardia, the department head, ignores her and doesn't take her seriously. When everyone leaves, Deborah feels insignificant and unheard, but Dexter encourages her, telling her to focus on her work and develop herself. Afterwards, Dexter goes to LaGuardia's office and explains to her that the crime scene suggests the killer was close to the victim, maybe an ex-lover. Then we see Jimmy entering an old building, stealing copper pipes to sell. He goes to check the source of a sound, finds a photo of one of the victims, and suddenly Dexter appears in his disguise, sedates Jimmy, ties him up and takes a blood sample. After a few hours, Dexter finishes cutting up the body. Suddenly Rita calls him, saying she needs to see him. He agrees, but on the way he notices a big car following him in the same direction, matching the description the police are looking for. He decides to follow it, and suddenly the car turns down a dead-end road. As it approaches him, the headlights are very bright and Dexter can't see well. The driver throws the head of the latest victim at Dexter. After that, the police arrive and start investigating what happened. Dexter goes to Rita very late, apologizes to her, and when he returns to his apartment, he finds a doll's head hanging on his fridge. When he opens the fridge, he finds the rest of the doll's parts inside, and realizes that the serial killer is watching him and sending him a message. as if inviting him to join the game. The next day, Dexter takes the doll's hand he found and notices that each finger is painted a different color, but he can't understand its meaning. He then goes to court to testify, focusing intently on every word he said. After the session, Dexter feels that the court is the perfect place to identify criminals who are acquitted. There he sees a family deeply affected by their son's death, and decides to attend their session. He sees the killer, who looks very normal, but Dexter senses inside that he is pretending and lying, so he decides to watch him and make sure himself. Afterwards, he goes to a new crime scene and learns that the victim fell from a bridge. But strangely they find a piece of another person's skin in the victim's mouth, indicating he was assaulted. Detective James goes to the victim's house to inform the family, but they discover another surprise: the victim's wife is also dead. Dexter returns to the scene, takes photos and notices something very strange and unnatural about the bloodstain. When he looks under the couch, he finds the victim's phone. At that moment, Angel says the last number the victim called was her husband's. The next day, Deborah finds the car the serial killer is using. At first, Dexter doesn't believe it until he sees it with his own eyes and notices it matches the description exactly. When they open the car, they find a huge ice block with the victim's fingers buried inside. Back at the lab, Masuka starts melting the ice and discovers that each finger is painted a different color. Just like the doll the killer, he left her in Dexter's apartment, and at that moment Dexter realizes that the message was directed at him and that the killer wants to attract his attention and impress him with his skill. At the same time, the police are monitoring the suspect in the case of the man who works on the bridge, and when they confirm his movements, they go and arrest him. As for Dexter, he goes to court to follow up on the case of Matt Chambers, the man who killed someone with his car while he was drunk, yet still got out of court acquitted. After that, Dexter returns to the crime scene of Ricky's wife, and Angel feels that there is still evidence hidden. Indeed, Dexter finds a drop of blood far from the victim's body, and realizes it could be the killer's blood. He takes the sample, analyzes it in the lab, and it turns out to be a perfect match. Dexter keeps monitoring Matt, finds out where he is, gets to know him, and talks to him. From their conversation, Dexter understands that Matt is planning to leave the city, so Dexter decides to finish him off as soon as possible. He takes his fingerprints to be sure and discovers that Matt had changed his name before, and was accused of the same crimes in other states. As for the suspect who was arrested at the station, an officer comes to him and tells him to come with him. When he gets him away from the cameras, he kills him, leaves him, and walks away as if nothing happened. After that, Dexter watches the news about what happened at the police station, and the investigator James is very upset because his only chance to catch the gang leader is gone. The next day, Dexter starts preparing to finish off Matt, gets everything ready, drugs him, and when Matt wakes up, he finds himself tied up. Dexter takes a blood sample from him as he always does, then kills him, returns to the apartment, and puts the blood sample with the rest of the samples he keeps. But he notices something very strange. A toy head has been put back in its place. The next day, Dexter goes out and starts monitoring a new killer, this time a young man named Jeremy, who has just gotten out of prison. Dexter starts looking for him, and discovers that Jeremy had been imprisoned before for stabbing someone to death, and he seems to be very skilled and professional. Then Dexter goes to Rita, and helps her plant a lemon tree in the garden. At that moment, one of her ex-husband's friends comes and asks her for the money he owes, but Rita tells him she doesn't have any money, so he takes her car instead of the debt and leaves. After that, Dexter goes to the new crime scene, where he finds the victim's body. The hand is colored, but this time the body is cut into pieces. Dexter is amazed at the killer's ability to get rid of the blood in such an impressive way. When Deborah arrives, she identifies the victim as one of the girls she knew when she worked in the vice department. She asks LaGuerta to let her return to that department temporarily to gather more information. At the same time, Dexter monitors Jeremy as he buys a knife from the market and immediately understands that this boy is up to something evil and seems to be preparing for another crime. Meanwhile, Deborah learns from the girls that the victim was riding in an old model car, takes its description, and returns to the station. Dexter is there and also learns that the night guard at the place where the victim died suddenly disappeared, and LaGuerta starts to suspect that he is the killer, completely forgetting about the ice truck killer. Dexter is secretly happy that she's not considering the wrong possibility and notices that LaGuerta is very focused on the guard and convinced he is the criminal, even though Deborah and Dexter don't believe. After that, Dexter monitors Jeremy as he leaves a party with his friend, and notices they're heading to an empty place. Dexter sees Jeremy about to kill his friend, so he intervenes at the last moment, and makes both boys run away from the place. Dexter is surprised by himself, and doesn't understand why he intervened, and saved the boy in the first place. When he returns to his car, he finds the glass broken and someone has stolen his wallet. Dexter remembers the first time he killed, and it was a nurse who gave lethal drugs in the hospital. Suddenly, while wearing masks, they go to attack the house of one of the gang leader's assistants. When James tries to stop them, he realizes they're trying to frame him for the crime, so he takes off and escapes quickly. At that time, Dexter returns to Jeremy, locks him up, and when he's about to drug and kill him, Jeremy surprises him and says he killed the man who assaulted him. This makes Dexter stop what he's doing because he feels Jeremy might be like him and could be his successor. Before leaving, he advises him saying, "Don't kill anyone except those who really deserve to die." Dexter then remembers his story with the nurse, how he waited for her to return home, prepared everything, managed to drug her and tie her up, and then asked her why she killed people in the hospital. She replied coldly that she was relieving them from their suffering, but Dexter doesn't believe her and finishes her off. After that, Harry's condition improves, but at the same time, investigator James finds the gang members chasing him everywhere, wanting to finish him off. Dexter returns and surprises Rita with a new car as a gift. The next day, Dexter goes to the new crime scene on the beach, and finds a severed hand placed on a chair. He understands that the serial killer is behind it. He notices that this time, the hand is from an old man, not a woman as usual, and under the hand, he finds a photo that reminds him of something from the past. Dexter returns to his apartment, pulls out the photo album, and discovers he had been photographed in that same place when he was a child. The next day, before trying to solve the mystery, he receives a report of a new crime from the same killer, and finds a severed leg next to a ball. At that moment, he understands that the killer is mocking him and sending him messages. At the station, investigator James talks to his colleague, and learns that the gang members are after him because they think he is the reason for what happened. At that time, Dexter discovers that the severed leg, and the previous hand, belong to the same person, who is the stadium's personal guard, and suspects he might still be alive. He immediately goes to inform LaGuerta, who learns from the mother that her son is still alive. But before Dexter can continue his search for the truth, he is informed of a new crime scene, with another body part of Tucci. Dexter realizes that all these places are places he had been photographed at as a child. Suddenly, Rita comes to visit him because she feels he has been stressed lately. After she leaves, Dexter looks at the album again and notices a mark on the back of a photo taken in front of a hospital. He decides to go there, especially since it has been abandoned for a long time. At the same time, investigator James is kidnapped, and the gang leader plans to finish him off, but the police intervene at the last moment. James discovers that his colleagues at the station had set him up as bait to catch the leader. Dexter actually arrives at the hospital, finds Tucci tied to the bed, and the man can't see him. He asks Dexter to relieve him and kill him because he can't bear it anymore. Suddenly, someone takes a picture of Dexter and runs away. Dexter finds his picture and informs the police about the place, and the ambulance comes and saves Tucci from death. Dexter is very happy because he was able to resist his killer instinct and save a human life. The next day, Dexter goes to the new crime scene. There was Tucci, who started analyzing the place to uncover the identity of the serial killer. At the same time, Rita, at work, notices that her colleague is devastated and crying, so she takes her aside to talk to her. She learns that her fiancé was trying to come from Cuba through a smuggler, and when the fiancé arrived, the smuggler demanded more money, but she didn't have any more. Since then her fiancé disappeared, and she hasn't been able to reach. Rita takes the smuggler's number from her friend, and tells her that Dexter might be able to help. Indeed, she sits with Dexter and tells him what happened. He reassures her and says he'll look into it. Dexter contacts someone from the police, and learns that when smugglers don't get their money, they might get rid of the people they're smuggling, and that the police have a list of suspects. Dexter goes to the address of one of them, but when he arrives, he doesn't find anyone. He approaches the warehouse and tries to open it, but then the owner shows up, stops him and asks what he's doing. Dexter acts quickly, says he's looking for a car, and leaves. But at night he returns, opens the warehouse, and discovers it's indeed the place where the smuggler kept the people he was smuggling. The next day, he gets a call from the officer who helped him before, telling him they've found a body by the shore and asking him to come identify it. Rita and her friend go to the morgue, and when they see the body, they confirm it's her missing fiancé. Tucci wakes up in the hospital, and James and Deborah go to see if he remembers anything about the killer thereafter, but he doesn't recall any details, so they let him. Meanwhile, Dexter is watching the Cuban smuggler as he returns home and notices he loves his wife very much. Dexter suspects the wife doesn't know about her husband's crimes. At the police station, someone comes claiming to have information about the kill. Dukes tries to interrogate him but eventually realizes he's lying. Dexter tries to figure out how the smuggler kills people who refuse to pay. At that moment, Rita calls to check on him and asks him to come over after work to watch a movie. During the movie, Rita is deeply affected and very sad, but Dexter feels nothing and leaves. He goes to the smuggler's boat, inspects it, finds photos of the smuggler with his wife, but notices a strange compartment. When he opens it, he's shocked to find the bodies of the victims, and realizes everything was right in front of him. In the hospital, Tucci closes his eyes, tries to remember what happened, and tells them the killer liked peppermint candy. Deborah immediately returns to the crime scene, searching for any clue, and they find a wrapper of the candy Tucci described. Dexter leaves a name and starts executing his plan. Meanwhile, the smuggler receives a new batch of people and locks them in the warehouse. Dexter arrives, prepares the place, and when the smuggler returns, he notices a lot of candles on the way, and follows them to a closed area covered with wax. Inside, he finds photos of all the victims. Dexter sedates him, but suddenly the smuggler's wife enters. Dexter notices she was about to open the warehouse, but when she saw people inside, she closed it again. Then he realizes she's an accomplice in her husband's crimes, and is amazed by their harmony and evil. Dexter kidnaps them both, ties them up, takes blood samples, and before killing them, asks about the secret to their marital happiness. They say they've always had the same dream. The next day, Dexter kills them, disposes of their bodies in the sea, not realizing someone is watching. Then he goes and opens the warehouse, freeing all the Cubans. He returns to his apartment, puts the blood samples in their place, among the rest of his collection. At night, he's at Rita's, talking with her about her dreams, and she starts feeling closer to him. The next day, Dexter receives a shocking call and rushes to the crime scene where the smuggler was killed, feeling very anxious. There, he finds that the serial killer has retrieved the smuggler's wife's body from the sea, which shocks him, especially when he realizes the killer must have gone deep diving to find the body, meaning he's being watched closely. Masuka is amazed at the precision and skill of the killer. Dexter tries to stay calm, but Masuka notices an injection mark on the victim's neck. Dexter quickly tries to distract him. Meanwhile, Deborah and Dokes open the warehouse, and the smell is horrible, but unfortunately they find no useful evidence. As they're leaving, they notice something strange in an old car. When they open it, they find a small Cuban child hiding inside. LaGuerta hugs him and tries to comfort him. Dexter feels like he's seen the child before but can't remember. At the station, Masuka gets the blood test results and discovers a very strong drug in the victim's system, which can only be used with official permission. Dexter gets nervous because he knows his name might be on that list. He returns to the crime scene, goes to the car where the child was, and searches it. There, he gets scared when he realizes the child might have seen him kidnapping the smuggler's wife, so he gets more anxious and angry. He returns to the station, accesses Masuka's computer, and deletes his name from the list of people authorized to use that drug. At that moment, Deborah comes to him, shows him the report she wrote about the killer, and says she's trying to identify him. Strangely, the description she wrote matches Dexter exactly. Dexter gets nervous and tries to convince her that her ideas are confused and illogical. Deborah gets upset because she was hoping for support and encouragement. As he's leaving the station, he hears James announce that the child will draw the features of the person he saw, and everyone in the station prepares. Dexter tries to avoid being seen by the child. The child draws part of the sketch. Later, when Dexter goes to enter the room, he finds it empty. When he sees the drawing, he's surprised to find LaGuerta with the child, trying to get him to sleep. He helps her a bit, then takes the drawing to look at it, and finds it only shows a pair of eyes with no clear feature. Dexter quickly returns home, gathers his bag of killing tools, puts it in a suitcase, and throws it into the sea. As he's disposing of the blood samples, he finds one with a smiling face drawn on it, and realizes the serial killer has sent him a message offering him a plan to save himself. Put the smuggler's blood on his wife's clothes, and put her blood on the smuggler's tools, making it look like an honor killing where the smuggler killed his wife and ran away. James says the child couldn't identify the smuggler, meaning the killer is someone else. But Dexter thinks the child was probably hungry, anxious, and not focused. When they return to the crime scene, they find the murder weapon, with one of the forensic analysts, confirming Dexter's plan. The next day, the child's relative comes to take him, and Dexter feels relieved, having gotten out of that predicament. But then the sketch results come in, and when he sees it, he finds it's just a normal drawing, so he feels safe and leaves. Rita prepares a birthday party for him, and is very happy, and Deborah is there but upset with him. Dexter says to himself that she will forgive him, and he spends a nice time with Cody and Ast. The next day, he arrives at a new crime scene, and discovers that the victim is a child at a school,
and the method of killing is very similar to Jeremy's. Dexter decides to meet him again. Angel and Deborah go to a suspect's house, but he escapes from. Dexter reviews the method of killing and finds it is the same as Jeremy's, and remembers that once he let him live because he killed the person who assaulted him, so he felt he deserved a chance. But when Dexter sees the face of the suspect Deborah is chasing, he confidently tells her that he is not the killer. He returns to Rita to find her devastated because the kids are missing. After a while, Paul, her ex-husband, arrives with the kids and tells her that he left his address and number. He meets Dexter for the first time and introduces himself, apologizes to Rita, and gives her the address. At the same time, Deborah calls Dexter to come to a new crime scene. When he goes, he tells her that the killer is just an amateur, but she insists that all the evidence is against him. Suddenly, they find an old, buried body with its leg cut off, and Dexter starts to doubt everything, and that the suspect might be the ice truck killer. At the station, everyone says Perry is the killer because he killed his mother and lived in her service for 2 years. But Dexter is not convinced and is more focused on Jeremy and wants to teach him and make him his successor. He goes to the place where Jeremy lives and tries to get him away, but the police raid the place and arrest Jeremy without noticing Dexter. At the same time, Deborah and Angel go to a nearby hotel and learn from the manager that Perry rented a room with a prostitute. When they go up, they find the girl tied up and confirm that Perry is the killer, but he is not there now. James calls Dexter and tells him that his theory about Jeremy was right and that he is watching him, but Dexter pays no attention to the matter. Perry returns to the room, but the police arrest him and take him in for questioning. Dexter is not sure that he is the killer who has been communicating recently, and Deborah celebrates with Tochi that they finally caught the killer, then goes out with Dr. Rudy, who invites her to dinner. Dexter enters the interrogation room with Jeremy and asks him why he went back to killing, and blames him for not listening, but leaves as soon as the investigator enters. The next day, he goes to the prison to visit him, but finds a crowd in front of the cell. When he arrives, he discovers that Jeremy has committed suicide. He then goes to Perry's cell and Dexter expected that he would recognize him, but when he meets him, Perry doesn't know him at all. At that moment, Dexter realizes that Perry is not the ice truck killer, and that the real killer is still out there. The next day, Dexter arrives at a new crime scene. The victim appears to have committed suicide with a gun, but when he talks to her husband, the man is sure his wife was murdered, and says she used to visit a psychiatrist named Dexter reviews the files of other victims who died in the same way, and discovers they all went to the same doctor. He decides to make an appointment with him, and follow up himself. He goes to the clinic and pretends to the doctor that he is worried about his friend who is thinking of suicide, but the doctor suspects him, and before things escalate, the doctor leaves. Dexter takes the opportunity to search through the appointment books and is very surprised, so he goes to ask the patient the doctor was with at the time and confirms that he was with him. He is forced to book another session to learn more. In the second session, Dexter starts asking him about people who live with masks and pretend, and the doctor advises him to let go of control and accept reality even if he doesn't like it. At night, Dexter returns to the clinic to search and finds surveillance camera. When he checks,
we then learn that Dr. Rudy is the real ice truck killer. We see Detective James with Angel, and they are on their way to the police station. Suddenly, James sees someone he recognizes from a long time ago, stops the car, and chases after him. The man runs until he escapes under a bridge. James doesn't give up and keeps chasing him until he kills him. When Angel arrives, he finds the man dead, and James tells him he saw a gun in his hand, so he shot him. But Dexter doesn't believe the story because the blood at the scene indicates that James started and fired first. LaGuerta tries to calm things down and says they should return to the station to talk. At the station, Dexter receives a letter in the mail telling him that his real father's name is Joseph, and he died 2 days ago, which is very strange because Harry had previously told him his father died 10 years ago. Dexter suspects the letter is not for him, so Rita offers to go with him to his father's house to see if the story is true. At the same time, Dr. Rudy tells Deborah that she must be by her brother's side during this time. Rita faces a problem with her ex-husband Paul because she will cancel his visit with the kids to go with Dexter, which upsets him a lot, but she insists on her decision. They travel together to his father's house and find an old neighbor who asks for their help, but Dexter tells her they won't stay long. After a while, Deborah and Rudy also arrive to support Dexter. The next day, Dexter is surprised that his father's death feels like a summer vacation, and he wakes up to find Rudy making coffee and drinking it with him. Then he goes to the morgue to see his father's corpse, and as soon as he sees it, he feels a strange sensation, especially when he notices the tattoo in his arm that reminds him of his father when he was young. The doctor leaves, leaving him alone, takes a blood sample from him, and also takes a blood sample from himself, sending them both to Masuka for analysis. Rita finds documents showing that his father had married people to help them get over addiction, which indicates that Dexter's father had stayed clean for Deborah and Rudy are enjoying their time together, and then Rudy talks to Dexter about the possibility that this man is actually his biological father. But Dexter refuses the idea because Harry never lied to him. Angel talks to a detective in another department and learns that Dexter was the one who killed the first man. Deborah answers a phone call from Masuka, who tells her that the blood analysis showed that the sample from the corpse matches Dexter. Dexter is throwing away some of his father's old things in the street, and Deborah comes to scold him because he's doubting Harry's words. She keeps blaming him for searching for things that won't help him. They go inside the house and spend the night, and in the morning she tells him to forget what happened and go back to how things were, and Dexter agrees, but he's still thinking about how his father died. She tells him that a week before Driscoll died, a man came to fix the TV and left quickly, and she describes his appearance. At night, Dexter secretly goes to the morgue again to check if his father died naturally or not, but when he arrives, he finds the corpse has disappeared, and there is a large box in its place. He immediately realizes they cremated the body, so he quickly escapes and takes the box with him before the guard catches him. On the street, he meets Rudy, who gives him a ride. Rudy asks Dexter to trust him and takes him to the bowling alley that his father used to love. They open the box there and Dexter scatters the ashes into the air. The next day, Angel arrives at the station and asks LaGuerta why the police didn't arrest James. She tells him that the murdered man was a former criminal, so Angel feels like he's become a snitch on his colleague. When he leaves, he gets bullied, but James intervenes and stops it. Rudy gets ready to go out with Deborah, but the old lady calls him to fix the TV. When Rita gets home, she finds Paul drunk and unable to walk, so she tells him not to come again when he's drunk, or she'll call the police. To quiet him, she agrees to be with him, but he's not coherent and tries to assault her, so Rita takes advantage of the situation, hits him, he loses consciousness, and she takes the kids and leaves the house. Rudy goes back to the neighbor dressed as a technician to finish her off. The next day, Dexter fixes Rita's door and has breakfast with them. She tells him she won't let Paul control her life anymore. At the station, one of the employees finds a very strange box. When Dexter examines it, he says it's blood, and it has a hotel name and a room number on it. They go to the hotel and Dokes breaks the door. The scene is horrifying because they find a huge amount of blood, so they call emergency services. Dexter goes in alone because he's the only one who can handle the scene and finds the room full of blood. He is shocked, falls to the ground, and can't speak. At Rita's work, a detective comes and tells her that Paul filed a case against her, claiming she assaulted him. Rita says he's lying, but they take her to the police station. Meanwhile, Dexter is helping outside the interrogation room, telling the lab what to do when he gets a call from Rita asking for help because she's at the police station. He tries to calm her and says he'll send her a lawyer. The lawyer comes and finds out that Paul entered the house against her will, but says Paul's test results are clean, so he could win the case and get custody of the kids because he's not an addict. Dexter reviews the blood patterns at the crime scene and says the criminal was alone and that the blood is from previous victims the criminal had kept, indicating it's the ice truck killer's work. Meanwhile, Paul leaves the hospital and takes the kids, which devastates Rita emotionally. Dexter breaks into Paul's house looking for any evidence against him and finds drug paraphernalia and a gun. As he's heading home, Rudy comes to visit him, says Deborah is upset, and asks for advice. They sit and talk for a while. Rudy is very nice, then gets a call from Deborah asking where he is, and when she finds out he's with Dexter, she gets very upset. Angel goes to the bar on Masuka's advice, sits with a woman there, and suddenly sees something very strange. A girl with a prosthetic arm, each morning painted a different color. He asks the woman about her and she says she doesn't know who made. He asks if the name is Perry, but she says no, it's someone else entirely. Dexter says goodbye to Rudy and when he goes into his apartment, he finds Rudy has forgotten his phone. Meanwhile, Angel tells Masuka what he saw and Masuka says the killer probably works in prosthetics. Angel returns Rudy's forgotten phone. Then we see Angel going to Rudy's clinic, telling him what happened at the bar, and that he's looking for more information about prosthetics. He gives Rudy his number in case he comes across anything strange. Rudy feels like he's about to be discovered and becomes very nervous. On the other side, Rita meets with her lawyer,
who explains that there is a prior agreement between her and Paul about visitation times, and that she had previously canceled a visit without reason. The lawyer calls Dexter and tells him that Paul's position in the case is now very strong and he will likely win and get custody of the kid. Rita agrees to let Paul visit the kids again, but Paul isn't satisfied and goes to confront Dexter, provoking him and telling him Rita will lose custody, and if Dexter tries to stop him, he'll take care of both him and Rita. Dexter gets angry, hits him hard enough to make him dizzy, puts him in his car, returns to Rita and tells her Paul left because he had an errand. The little boy also notices his father's car is gone. Dexter takes Paul to his apartment, gives him a dose of drugs, and gets rid of him temporarily. After that, LaGuerta announces they have reopened the ice truck killer case, and that Perry, the previous suspect, turned out to be an imposter and not the real killer, who is still at large. LaGuerta's boss tells her he was the one who made her head of the department, and that he could demote her back to regular detective if she fails in this case. Rita gets a happy call that Paul has been arrested again, and they found a weapon and drugs with him, so he goes back to jail. Angel is leaving his car when suddenly someone attacks him. The attacker is armed, shoots Angel, but Angel manages to hit and wound him, and the person escapes. Of course, the attacker was Rudy, and to avoid suspicion he goes to the station to meet Deborah, brings her flowers and apologizes, but she refuses to go home with him because she's busy. Dexter returns to the hotel room that was full of blood and tries to understand what happens. Suddenly he begins to remember things from his childhood that were similar. Then he receives the news that Angel has been stabbed. He moves around the hospital and everyone in the department is annoyed with him. The girl who was with Angel at the bar turns out to be known as Rudy, so he goes to meet her. When he confirms she hasn't said anything, he kills her and takes her to the freezer at home. LaGuerta comes out of the operating room and reassures everyone that the surgery was successful and the whole team checks on Angel, but James notices that Dexter isn't as affected as they are and also isn't from the area. James gets angry, chases after him and yells at him for leaving them at such a critical moment. Meanwhile, Rudy prepares his new victim, cuts her up like the previous victims, and is surprised when Deborah comes to visit him. He takes her inside his apartment. Rudy sits with Rita and tells her what happened to Angel, and they spend the rest of the day together. At the same time, the police arrive at the scene of a new crime. LaGuerta asks James to take Dexter to the location, where the crime scene is set up as if it were a gift. Dexter finds a videotape under one of the boxes, and the police review it, discovering that the serial killer is threatening the victim and telling her to speak on his behalf, saying the police arrested the wrong person, and that his reputation is ruined, with people now seeing him as an amateur. From the video, they understand that the victim was upside down and figure out the secret behind the killer disposing of the victim's blood. Rudy arrives at Deborah and Dexter's place because he wants to talk to her. Deborah gets up and leaves him to talk, and Dexter notices an injury on Rudy's mouth. When he asks about it, Rudy says he got hurt while working in the workshop. When Dexter returns to the lab, he analyzes the blood on Angel's shirt and finds out that the person who attacked Angel was also injured. He informs LaGuerta about this. At that time, Deborah is very busy, but receives a message from Rudy asking to see her at the weekend. When Dexter finds out, he tells her Rudy is probably planning to propose, and that he'll talk to her when he gets back from the library. At the library, Dexter starts reviewing his mother's murder case, but doesn't find enough details. Then he realizes that the number 10 which was on the blood-soaked room, refers to his mother's date of death. He starts digging more into the incident, but in the middle of his search, Rita calls to tell him her son is missing. Dexter calls the police and goes to look for him, discovering the boy was upset after learning his father went to jail again. Dexter guesses where he might have gone and finds him there. Back at the station, LaGuerta is surprised that her boss is happy even though his reputation was tarnished because of her. But when he enters her office, he tells her she failed to catch the killer and must hand over the office today to someone more suitable. Meanwhile, Rita tries to solve her kids' issues with their father by offering to visit Paul in prison. He agrees and they go to see him. Dexter goes to Angel to take a blood sample from the wound on his head, as it came from the killer. During their talk, Angel mentions seeing Rudy before the incident, because he was looking for information about the killer. Dexter connects the dots and realizes the real reason for Rudy's mouth injury is the incident with Angel. He becomes worried about his sister. Rudy calls Deborah and asks her to dinner. At the same time, Dexter rushes to Rudy's apartment, but can't get in, so he searches the trash, and finds a blood-stained cotton swab. Meanwhile, Deborah arrives at the boat Rudy reserved for dinner, and they spend time together, but he surprises her with a marriage proposal. She is shocked and very happy. On the other side, Dexter goes to the lab to analyze the blood and tries to call his sister to find out where she is, but she doesn't answer, so he leaves her a message. Deborah is very happy but notices Rudy eating mint candies, just like the guard described the killer. She realizes this was the only time the victim saw the killer and survived, because the victim's hands were already cut off, and Angel was actually looking for this case. Dexter gets the analysis results, which match, making him more worried about Deborah, as she's really with the killer. He sends an alert to all units to look for her. Rudy has indeed kidnapped Deborah and tells her that everything that happened was part of his plan from the beginning. Dexter goes home to look for any clue to her location but finds nothing until his computer turns on and he sees a song and photos in the woods, which bring back childhood memory. He follows up on the old case of his mother's murder and finds the location of the container where he was locked up as a child. At the same time, Rita gets a call from Paul, who tells her that when he went to the hospital he had a skull fracture and suspects Dexter did it, but she doesn't believe him and hangs up. At the station, LaGuerta hands over the office, and the new captain, Pascal, is introduced. They ask LaGuerta to stay until James arrives. Dexter goes to the location of the containers, bypasses security, and searches for his container. When he opens it, he finds it full of bananas, but the surprise is that James has been watching him the whole time and asks why he's there, given the investigation, and that his sister is in danger. They fight, but a guard arrives and separates them. Then they get a call from the police station. Meanwhile, Deborah is locked in a car with another victim. Dexter goes to Rudy's house after the police raid it, and finds a room set up for storing victims' bodies in freezers. Masuka confirms the last victim was indeed a victim of the kill. Dexter asks to see the photos from the scene and finds a box of paints at Rudy's house with the song Born Free inside, realizing it refers to the place where he was born. At the same time, Deborah is with Rudy at that address, and he drugs her again. Dexter arrives at the place and recalls memories with his mother as she painted his finger, then remembers he had an older brother named Brian. Suddenly, Rudy appears in front of him and tells him they were both in the same incident, but he was left in the shelter while Dexter was adopted by Harry, who sensed Brian was psychologically affected by the incident. Unlike Dexter, Rudy surprises him by saying he wants to help him kill and that they could work together. Rudy keeps trying to convince Dexter he'll be safe with him and can live as he wants. Dexter seems convinced, and they head together to where Deborah is. There, Rudy ties her up the same way Dexter is used to tying up his victims. But when Rudy tries to kill her, Dexter completely refuses and says he only kills criminals. Rudy tries to convince him there's no such thing as a hero who kills criminals, and that they're both alike. He tries to kill Deborah, but Dexter intervenes and stops him at the last moment. The police arrive just then and Rudy escapes before they can catch him. They manage to rescue Deborah, but after what happened, James threatens Dexter that he'll fire him for hiding information from them. And also, the strange reason is how come Cam was there before them, and when Deborah hears his words, she comes in and yells at him fiercely and defends Dexter, because he saved her life. She says he should be honored instead of punished. On the way to the hospital, Dexter feels that Rudy won't leave Deborah alone and will come back to finish her off. At the same time, Rita's ex-husband calls her and says that his shoe was still at her house, and that he's sure Dexter was the one who hit him, but she doesn't believe him and hangs up on him again. Dexter takes his sister and puts her in her room and locks the door well because he's sure Rudy will come back, and that's exactly what happens. Rudy breaks into the apartment at night and opens Deborah's room, but he's surprised that it's not the real Deborah, but just pieces from the bodies he used to cut up. Then Dexter comes out from behind and drugs him. When Rudy wakes up, he finds himself tied up in the same way as Dexter's victim. He tries to appeal to Dexter's emotions and tells him he's sad they won't be together, and he really does affect Dexter with his words. But before he lets him go, Dexter decides to finish him off quickly and kill him, even though he feels sad because in the end, that was his only brother who knew his secret and accepted him. The police come the next day and find Rudy's body killed in the same way as the ice truck killer. After that, Dexter goes to apologize to Rita for all the mess that happened lately, and their relationship improves again, but Dokes still isn't convinced and keeps watching him. The surprise is that Rita actually finds the shoe just like her ex said, but she decides to ignore it because Paul caused her a lot of trouble in her life. At work, Dexter comes in and finds everyone celebrating him as the hero who got rid of the ice truck killer, and he's happy on the outside, but inside he's more relieved because no one was able to discover his secret. And here the first season of Dexter ends. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you did, make sure to subscribe for more